Good to be with you today, speaking from up here in Durham. We're going to, part of what I've been trying to do over the lockdown with the various kind of posts that I do has been in exploring the online church and exploring the kind of phenomenon of cultural shift that's happened within the church very successfully during that change. So I'm going to kind of share a little bit about this. I've already sent this presentation to Elliot, and so you should be able to kind of see all the slides afterwards, because I may get through them all. As Eunice said this funny thing while she was, you need to start a calendar rather than a clock when you get me speaking. I resonate with that so much, and I will try to shut up. Thank you, Mike. I can see you laughing. Good to see you, and all the people I know as well in the Synod. So let me share a slide, and then I'll stop jabbering and get on with the business. Great. So I hope you can see that. And what do I want to say? So first of all, the church, the church and the pandemic. What have we done during the pandemic? Well, first of all, some people joined the online church, and I'm going to give you some figures about that later on. We all diversified. That's the first thing we had to do. Do you remember that time back last March when the government said all churches are going to close, and suddenly we had to do church in a completely different way? We had 1 week to do it, and then they changed the rules again, and we had another kind of jab at doing it. And some of us decided actually we go somewhere else or do lots of different things, but we diversified. As Eunice has just pointed out, we cared for those in need. We reached out to those that we could. And a lot of people we couldn't. We went beyond ourselves. We pushed ourselves. We did so much. We remembered the poor, the lonely, and the bereaved, especially the bereaved. Those amongst us who were not able to mourn the dead, and the mourn for those loved ones. Ministers who've done funerals in crazy situations, ministers who cared for people who not able to visit them in hospital or at their bedside as they die, and so on. We've been instruments of grace throughout the land. The number of people who appreciate the ministry of the church has gone up. As you know, 33% of atheists now believe there is a role for the church in contemporary society, up from about 20% before the pandemic. We have been church. There's a joke going around right at the beginning of the pandemic of the devil saying to God, just with a little germ, I've closed down your whole operation. And God says, oh no, I've opened a branch in every single home. Really interesting kind of stuff that we've done. So first of all, a round of applause to you all, because you've all done absolutely fantastic. But as Eunice said, there's also been a kind of sense of neurosis about what's going on. We are all dead tired. I don't know whether you're Zoom fatigued. I don't know whether you're kind of worn out by the pandemic. I don't know whether you're frazzled to the end of your being. But there is a sense that everything has been too much. And part of that is actually because we've gone through a massive cultural revolution within the church. A lot of people talk about the way in which the church has kind of caught up with the rest of society. We've caught up perhaps 50 years of technological shift in one year. And that means that's going to cause lots and lots of anxiety for us, and kind of feelings of dis-ease and disengagement. And, well, what are we supposed to do? One slide that kind of helps to explore that is this, how long does technology take to reach 50 million users? And you can see we had 75 years to get used to the telephone being everywhere, 38 years to get used to the radio, 13 years to get used to television. You see the figures are getting lower. Only 4 years to get used to the internet for 50 million users. Facebook, 2 years, not 2 million. 19 months for Instagram, and so on and go down. And then Chewbacca's mum. Has everybody seen Chewbacca's mum? Fantastic YouTube video where a lady kind of uses a YouTube mask. It's really funny. I see a few people nodding. If you haven't seen it, go and search it on YouTube. It'll be there, and you can have a good laugh as this lady laughs and shares about it. But that post from a couple of years ago now only took 24 hours for 50 million people to see it. Okay, now it's really amazing that technology becomes something that everybody's using so quickly, but that also makes our brains go crazy because we don't have the opportunity to get used to it. We can't settle in and think, oh, well, that's okay. I mean, you think a brand new hymn takes a while to get us used to, yeah? Or kind of move, you know, that old joke about the piano being moved across the church 1 centimetre a year so nobody moans about it, okay? But this year has been a kind of massive shift, massive cultural shift. We've had to do everything all of a sudden, and we've had to kind of jump into new ways again and again and again and again and again. And now we're kind of facing the end of lockdown, coming out of lockdown, and trying to say, actually, how do we do church again in a new way? Well, I've been kind of pushing very, very strongly in a little Grove book that I wrote, this one here. Look, it's really, really thin, and it's only £3, I think, from Grove Books, called Hybrid Church. I've been trying to push this idea of trying to mix online and offline together to open up the body of Christ to all, okay? And as this synod says, to go beyond our walls, to say that we're not a church that's confined to walls. Instead, we're a connectional church. We're a church which reaches out beyond the walls into the whole of society. So what's hybrid church? It's a fresh expression of church within digital culture, or within network culture, you might want to call it, because I think we get mixed up with technology too much. I'm not suggesting we all need to kind of start doing Zoom church, what have you. It's actually a shift out into lots of technologies, telephone technology, print technology, anything beyond the walls technology, saying that church needs to embrace the whole body of Christ, whether they are those people who are able to come into our physical buildings, or actually those people who are actually out there in society who have loved coming and visiting us digitally. People who can't get into our physical buildings, but still want to be part of the church. So it's a merging really of physical church and church online, or what we might call digital church. Giving people the choice to be where they can, to be where they feel safe, to be where they experience God, to be the body of Christ. And a lot of people who've come to visit our online church and what have you have talked about the sofa behind the back pew, this safe place where they can come and sit and look at what we're doing. Because you've got to admit, church is a scary place to come for the first time, isn't it? You know, you don't know who's going to run up and ask you to be the church treasurer, you know, or say, I think you're called to be a minister. We're a bit short of ministers. Come along. You know, or they might want to, you know, we might have to roll our trousers up in a funny way, or kind of shake hands in a funny way or something. What's going on? You know, what do they do inside that building? And all of a sudden, we've given millions of people the opportunity to look into church and say, that's what they do. Yeah, it's not bad, is it? I'll come along and have a look and see what's happening there. So we're giving people a choice, and let's allow that to happen still. Let's push that out and let it roll and see what we can do. So it's incorporating physically present and digitally present members of the congregation in a corporate act of worship, or I should also say in discipleship, in prayer meetings, in business meetings, opening the church up to say that it's not just people who can manage to get into our buildings who can be part of us. It's for everybody. And it's really important to acknowledge the whole body of Christ. You know, the people who are experts at online church, the disabled. The disabled community has been doing this for decades. People who haven't been able to come into the online physical church, who can't fit into our agendas and our timetables, so have created an online church for themselves. So we've got to be very careful that we're not kind of taking over their space or colonizing their space, as though, you know, it's almost like we've taken over America. You know, the church has kind of gone online and we're going somewhere where it's virgin territory, and we forget about the First Nation Americans who were there before, the disabled who've been there all the time, rather than just kind of thinking we're the first ever to do this. So it's about discipling, pastoring, serving the congregation where they are. Let's look at the stats. Look, I've talked too much already. 24 to 28% of the adult population, according to Savanta Comres, regularly engaged in online worship during the core of the lockdown last summer. Now, that would actually mean that 16.2 million people popped into online worship. And the figure's once a month, because that's what the British National Survey, Social Attitudes Survey, wants you to say is regular worship. Now, our usual attendance is about 4 million in physical church. And so we know, and that's not just in Bethany, that's across the whole of the British church. And that means that we probably have about 400% increase in the number of people who are popping in and seeing what's happening. Somebody has already said on this, on the Synod today, it's really important to think about what we're going to do with those people. How do we keep the church open for them? How do we say to people of lots of different age groups that we still want you to be present? Look at the number of people in categories which we're not very connected with young people, 18 to 24 and 25 to 35, young adults who kind of have really engaged in online worship and want to kind of come and visit. Are we saying to all those people, nah, we're going to turn it all off now because our church is back? Or can we actually in some way still invite them in, still allow them to connect? Here's some stuff from the Irish Church. They've done a couple of researches out of Queen's University Belfast with Gladys Daniel, who's got a big project called Beyond the Walls. 82% continued ministry and so on. 87% provided online engagement across a Catholic and Protestant spectrum. Most of them are still saying they still want to kind of keeping it going. A Northern Irish minister, Michael Spence, I think it is, said, we can't go back to where we were. Do we really want to kind of unpick all the progress that we've made over the last few months? Or is it time to kind of push on? This is a chart that I've produced out of the data from the Irish Church Survey. It's really, really important to kind of notice the colour shift between these patterns, because you'll see that most Catholic churches or religious organisations are offering several per day engagements with the online church. So they're offering morning prayer and evening prayer and perhaps a Bible study, or perhaps time to get together and have a chat, coffee mornings and coffee afternoons and so on. Certainly once a day, you know, but that's quite high, that's quite intense. Most Protestants are, that's the red and the yellow here in it, and the grey of the Methodists. I'm sorry, I think it's terrible that I put grey for Methodists, sorry. But they're going for the kind of several a week or once a week especially. So they're focusing on Sundays. But the Catholic Church has gone for spreading that out and doing lots more stuff. And one of the things we've really learned over this time, that it's not just worship that's flourished, it's discipleship. Alpha is going through the roof with the number of people wanting to engage online. Prayer meetings are full. Talk about the Beverley Minster, where I'm talking with the guy there, the vicar there, who, you know, I said to him, so how many, before the pandemic, how many people join you for morning prayer? One, he said, usually. Sometimes nobody. I was sat in the church on my own. So now you're doing it online. How many are sharing with you every day? Oh, 50. Oh, more. You know, it's amazing. And that's really interesting that you know, Durham Cathedral's now had to start up a college of prayer because they're getting up to 4,000 people a day engaging with their online ministry, their online prayer. You know, this sense of people wanting to come and be with God, spending time in a time of prayer, getting their spirituality right. So discipleship is actually as important as services. So where do we go next? Well, I've already said it. Hybridity is here to stay. We need to think about how we balance digital and physical together, and whether we do that, you know, as one church per circuit decides to go for the hybrid option or maintains the digital. Others look at social aspects of what they're doing. It really depends upon what you feel you can do and how you can develop the ministry around that. We need to remember, of course, that technology changes the way that we do things. We need to be very careful that we don't slip up and start saying that YouTube is the best thing for everything. Zoom is actually really good for community. It's really good to see your faces. It's really good to engage with you. So perhaps community on Zoom is really good. Perhaps Facebook is good for a mix of text messaging and some video. And perhaps it's good as well for some pastoral work as well. But also prayer vines or prayer groups on WhatsApp, Signal or Telegram. You know, we're part of a prophetic prayer group, and we kind of get about, you know, 30 texts a day on our WhatsApp channels. People are praying over various Bible readings or songs and what have you, and encouraging us and teaching us more and more stuff. I'm aware that I'm running out of time, so I just want to kind of look at one more thing. Hybrid practicalities. What do we do for hybrid? Well, technology is not just digital. Technology is about phone, paper, mobile. Look at the work of Nell Shallow in the Grantham circuit, in one of those southern districts down in the Midlands. And Nell's been kind of doing fantastic stuff around agape services, about sharing things online, sharing things by paper, sharing things on Facebook. Look at the plurality of platforms that we can engage with: YouTube, Zoom, Facebook. Look at the importance of Zoom coffee meetings, prayer groups, WhatsApp. Look at this business meeting here that we're having. Well, why can't we have business meetings? Why can't we have church councils on Zoom? Why can't we have church councils that don't make us come out? Especially for prayer groups, especially, that are really important. We need to invite the housebound, the vulnerable, the disabled, the anonymous to worship. And also we need to think about our ecclesiology. How do we open up the church to be the full body of Christ, the whole body of Christ? I'd also put a call in for getting our worship right. We haven't had online communion throughout the pandemic, and I grieve the number of people who've died without receiving what Wesley said was the means of grace. I think it's about time the Methodist Church took hold of the nettle, as it were, and allowed us to do online communion. As a Methodist minister, I'm of course obedient to the church and not doing it, but I really look forward to the conversation about allowing ritual online, to allow the means of grace to be shared online. We are all present to one another. We are in community with one another. Let's do communion with one another as well. And at that point, I'll shut up. There's more slides, but you can read those at your leisure. It's more important to get into your groups.